Begin the current Daf, Mesech's Chagigah Daf Chafhei. Begin on the third line down at the top of the Amud. We begin the Gemara explaining this halacha of our Mishnah, which is the second Mishnah in this parak. First Mishnah we spoke about Chaim B'Kodesh, like the topic of this parak. 11 stringencies Kachim has over Truma, and in our Mishnah we spoke about one, possibly two stringencies that we have by Truma over that of Kachim. That by Truma, that there's an emunus that we have, that we believe the Amaretz regarding, although we don't really believe him, we usually treat him as Tameh, we believe him regarding the purity of the wine and the oil all year round. And in contrast to Truma, it's only at the time of the Gita Abadim that we actually trust him. Shis corresponds with Kalzich and Cheskel to anytime that V'chem B'Shem is joining us for today's daf. Some of the things we're going to discuss in today's daf are Nemanus al Kodesh v'Truma, whether an Amaretz is believed that Kodesh or Truma is tar. And this halacha might differ b'shas Gita Abadim, like we said during the wine and olive pressing season. Leikalimenu, when a kohen may not accept wine of Truma from an Amaretz. Kadiyam Kadishim Amaduvas, like we said in the Mishnah, when he's believed about the jugs. Tumas Eretz Amim, land outside of Eretz Yisrael, is considered defiled. Beis Pras, a field which had a grave in it that was plowed over, and now there might be bone fragments all over. Regarding certain halachas, we allow walking through it by blowing on the ground before walking, and we assume the person or the things that pass through are to be remained as tar. So begin the current daf. So the Gemara begins that the opening halacha of the Mishnah said the chumrah of truma is that in Yehuda, in Judea, that we're going to trust the Amaretz regarding the purity of the wine, the oil. We could use it for the Nesachim, we could use oil for the Menachas all year round, in contrast to that of Truma. So the Gemara has a question, says, interesting, why are you saying Yehuda in? You're saying the Amaretz you can believe for Kachim in Judea. Again, that's just one specific area, which is the area of Yerushalayim, was in Judea, but in the Galilee, what this is annexation, what they don't is someone is contending, that the Galilee shouldn't be part of Eretz Yisrael. Why would that be a problem that they would not be believed regarding Kachim over there? So the Gemara says, no, of course, there's no difference in Amaratzim where they live, but Amar Shloka says there's a different problem. What happens is that there's a strip of land of the nations of the world, which Tais discusses this idea of saying the Kutim, seemingly that this shouldn't be a problem. But the way Rashi translates is talking about Eretz Amim, meaning a nation, there's a non-Eretz Yisrael land, a strip that's Mavsekes B'Neim that separates between the Galilee and Judea. Now, Yerushalayim is in Yehuda. You cannot bring the Nesachim, you can't bring the wine of Shem into Yerushalayim in the state of purity because Chacham goes to Toman Eretz Amim. And actually, as Rashi points out, the truth is not even the Amaretz, even a Chaver who's from the Galilee cannot bring wine for the Nesachim because you have this strip of land that's separating. There's no way, we're not connected. They're trying to make Jerusalem connected. There's no way to get from the Galilee to Yehuda. And very simple, you have Tumas Eretz Amim. Taisa says that there actually is a small strip, and that's how you have certain ways, but it's a very narrow strip. And the be that is made to carry jugs of oil and wine, you wouldn't be able to get through. So they said, well, what's the problem? When they said why don't you bring it through a carriage, a trunk, a closet? Meaning a person is not makabel tuma when he's in an enclosed area. So bring the jugs through some type of a UPS, some type of a closed entity, and it won't be makabel tuma. So the Gemara, Hamani Rebbe, who's the Mishnah going like? It's going like Rebbe. The Amar that he says oil zaruk. Even though it's an oil, it's in an enclosed area. But if it's moving and it's being thrown, lashme oil. It's not called an oil to be a separation between the airspace of Eretz Amim and the items. And as discusses about Riches, Rashi says they were geyser on the Avir. And do you need the oil to separate? Going like Rabbi, that there's no way of separating because it's not an oil when it's moving. It's not like learn the Brisa. And Nechnas Eretz Amim, if someone goes into out of Eretz Yisrael to one of the lands of the nations, B'Sheda to B'Migdal, in an enclosed entity like a carriage, a trunk, or a closet, Rabbi says you're going to be Tamei. Rabbi says you're going to be Tar. So there's no way of getting the item through from the Galilee. That's the reason why we said it's from Yehuda, because from the Galilee there's no way getting it. Says, well, why? Why don't you bring it in the earthen vessel that's that's surrounded with a tightly fastened seal. That protects whatever's inside. That's not medin oil. So that's even if it's zaruk. So what's the problem? Why can't you get a package of the shemen and the yayin from the Galilee to so to speak, trust them? So Rabbi Lozi says, Shainin, but we have Tanaim who learned in the Braisa that ein hektish nitzim b'samet pasel. That hektish is not protected with a tightly fastened seal. Which is discussed why wasn't this not mentioned by the Milas. But that's one of the things that we say the hektish is not protected with. Says I what time learned the Braisa in chatas. Chatas again doesn't mean the karma chatas. It's a terminology we use for the ash water of the paraduma. That's not nitzelis b'samet pasel. That's not protected with a tightly fastened seal. My love isn't the inference saying hakodesh nitzel, but because chatas paraduma is the highest level. You have chulin, you have meiser, you have truma, you have kachim, you have chatas. So that's what's saying chatas is not protected. It sounds like regular kachim would be protected. That refutes what you just said. So no, the diuk is differently. The diuk the Bryce is trying to say is hamayim she'en mukadashim. But if the waters, let's say the live spring waters that were not sanctified yet, that you did not put the ashes yet into, that's what we're saying the tzilim mitzvah pasal. They would be protected with a tightly fastened seal, and yeah, it would be valid to sanctify them subsequently. But it's not saying chatas to exclude that of kachim. Kachim also has that severity that it's not nitzelis mitzvah pasal, it's not protected with tightly fastened seal. So there's no way to get it across. So they're very simple. It wouldn't work with oil because oil is zarak lishmei oil, and it wouldn't work with tzimmet pasal because tzimmet pasal is not protected by that of kachim. But says the Gemara. But Ula said, Chavraya Medachen, our friends, our colleagues, they purify their wine and their oil for the Mizbeach, Begalila in the Galilee. Now, if you're telling me that there's a strip of Eretz Am that separates, what's the point of being Matar? There's no way of getting it anyway. What's the point? Says, well, you're right. Manichim, they leave it. Well, because Eliyahu is going to come, he's going to show them that there is a path. That's not from Eretz Am. It is connected, but we just don't know where. And people are passing by, becoming Tameh. That is why we said in the Mishnah that in Yehuda, then you're right, not specifically Yehuda. It's even everywhere, of course, but it's a technicality that wouldn't work in the Galilee for anyone, not just Amoritz, even by Yochanan. Now, the Mishnah said that although it's a chumrah of truma over kachim, that we don't trust Amoritz regarding truma, we only trust him regarding kachim, but the B'shas Akitis at the time of the olive press and the wine press, then we believe him even regarding truma. On this, the Gemara asks a contradiction from the Mishnah Mesech is Taharas. Mishnah discusses there regarding Ha'ma'aretz, Hagoymer Zeisa, meaning he's coming to finish off the production of his olives. So the halacha is Yishayr Kupa Achas, he should leave over one box of his olives for the purposes of his trumas, meaning don't put it into the olive press because we don't trust him, because once it gets wet, it's going to become tummy. So put away one box, and give it to a poor kohen, which Taisa says really shouldn't be ani kohen, it should be le'eni hakohen, because it has nothing to do with giving a poor kohen. It's about do it to the eyesight of a kohen, meaning let the kohen see that the olives were never huchsher, they didn't become squeezed yet, they weren't yet moist to become acceptable for tumah, and then the kohen will do it in the state of purity, and then he'll be able to have his truma Torah. So we see obviously that even at the time of the Gitas Vabadim, we don't trust him because we're saying he's coming to finish off his olives. So what do you mean? I thought we trust him. So why do you have to do it and leave it over the olives and you don't do it and let the kohen do it? I thought we trust him. So Rabbi Nachman says, Lekash, not difficult. Why? Our Mishnah that says that we trust him is Becharfi, is by when there's the early part of the season. The Mishnah Mesechtes Torah is talking about Ba'afli, where it's late in the season, where most of the people already finished their pressing of their olives and their grapes. Then we said we don't believe him anymore because it's not really part of the time of the Gitis Vabadim, because it's already very, very late in the season, and therefore that's why we said, okay, then we don't believe you anymore, and then you have to leave it in the kohen, let the kohen do it himself. But the Gemara asks, somebody Rav says, what's considered like the late? Who's late? So he says, like those of your father. Your father's always late, and that would have to be left late in the kohen. Or Rabbi Yisrael, he says, Beglila Shano. He says another answer to answer the original question. He says, there Mesechtes Taharas, that it sounds like we don't trust him, is specifically in the Galilee. Now, why would that be in the Galilee? So, Tais has a svara, some Kisvei Yodas actually add on the words that Migu Doloi Mahamni HaKodesh, because we said in the Galilee, if you recall, we said we don't believe him regarding Kachim, so Lemhemni Namai Truma, so we also don't trust him regarding Truma, because if we're not trusting him regarding Kachim, we're not going to trust him regarding Truma. But either as it may, our Mishnah that says that we do believe him is in Yehuda, because that's actually what the Mishnah was talking about. The Mishnah was saying that in Yehuda we trust him regarding the purity of the wine and the oil, and that's what the Mishnah says. And at the time of the Gitais, V'habadim, then even on Truma, but it's going only on those Yehuda. Those in the Galilee, no, we don't trust him that not only for Kachim, but also for Truma. So this that we trust him for Truma is specifically in Yehuda. But the problem is the Gemara refutes this anyway. Eis Baya. Baya asks from the following brayso. Ever Hayad Megalil, the other two areas of Eretz Yisrael, which is Transjordan and the Galilee, Haden Yehuda. They have the same halach as Yehuda. That what? That regarding Truma, and they are trust regarding wine at the time of the pressing of the wine, and on the oil at the time when they're pressing the oil. But not on the oil at the time when on the wine when they're doing the oil. Not in the oil when they're doing the wine. So says Gemara, you're right. It's clear that El Machvarta, Kedushan Mikar, we have to say like we answered before, that Rav Nachman differentiated to resolve the contradiction if it's early season or late season. Early season, our Mishnah says we do trust him. The Mishnah says talking about late season that we don't trust him. But to differentiate between Yehuda and the Galil, you can't, because the Brayso clearly says the Galil is the same thing as Yehuda, that we do trust him at the time of the Gitas Vabadim, and therefore we have to say like the first answer of the Gemara. The Mishnah said, but Avru Gitas Vabadim, once the time of the olive press and the wine press has already, the season has already passed, and then the Amoritz brings the coin and says, oh, the coin, he brings him a barrel of wine, like a blend, he shouldn't receive from him. But what the Amoritz could do, just leave the next pressing season, and then bring it to the coin. Now, by the name of Rav Sheish, but they asked from Rav Sheish the following question. Of a kibble, let's say a coin violated, and he took it from him. A big, huge gift, this is great wine quality, he took it from him. So, what's the halacha? Could the coin himself leave it for the next pressing season? Because then we believe the Amoritz. So Lavu, he said to them, we learned as the Mishnah says as Demai. As you continue to Beis, the Mishnah says as follows. Chaved va'amaretz. Sometimes you have this in one family that one son starks out, he flips in and he becomes a big chaved, becomes a Talmid Chacham. And va'amaretz, but his brother is a amaretz. Sheyoshu savim amaretz. Now the Tata passed away, who is namaretz, and these two sons are inheriting their father. Now, the problem is, if the father was Amaretz, we have to assume that his items were tummy. Now, this chaver, he's careful for the laws of Tara. So, the chaver could tell his brother Amaretz, he says, look, do me a favor. You take the wheat in that place, which he knows has already been susceptible to tumah. I'll take the wheat in that other place where he knows was not susceptible yet to tumah. And he can tell him, you take the wine in that place. I'll take the wine in a different place. As Rashi explains, which Taisa discusses this, what Rashi says, that since they're the same species, it's both wine, both wheat, just in different locations, so we could say the halachic principle of yesh breder. Yesh breder means to say, this was always this guy's portion, this was always this guy's portion. And the chaver is not really swapping. He's not really bartering, not exchanging with his brother, the Amaretz, his portions that were tummy, that he's giving now to the Amaretz, and he's getting the tar ones. So therefore, there's no problem about saying, you take that, I'll take this. But he's not allowed to tell him, you take all father's liquids, and I'll take all his dried goods. Or you take all the wheat, and I'll take all the barley. You know why? Because when it's two different species, you cannot say the concept of breira. When the father passed away, oh, this was his portion, this was his portion, because it's not true. When the father passed away, every species is evenly divided. So it comes out that this chaver is swapping the tummy for the tahar, and he's violating lifnei even l'sid michshol. It's not so clear exactly what lifnei even is, but if we presume that it's tummy, or that they're going to become tummy, but the Amaret's brother is going to do something wrong with the tummy items, and you're causing a stumbling block because you're giving him the tummy ones, but you're not allowed to do that. That's what the Mishnah says. Now, but Tani Allah, we learned the Brayso on that Mishnah. I say chaver, so that chaver, the kain, if he has oil for truma, so Soif halach, again, he cannot swap it with his brother the Amaretz, so he's stuck here with this truma shemen, which we presume his father the Amaretz was matame, so he can't obviously eat it. So he burns that truma, he lights it for his candles, and he can leave over the dry good that he could use when he needs to. Frek the Gemara, why you tell me he has to burn the lach? Let him leave over his father Damaoritz's oil, legas haba, to the coming pressing season when we believe Amaratzim. Obviously, the fact that he can't do that because you can't, the Amaretz could hold back from giving. If he gives it at the time of the pressing season, we'll take from him, even though it was from before. But if he gave it not during that season, obviously we can't ourselves hold on to it, because if you could, then why would this son, the chaver, have to go ahead and burn it? Why wouldn't he just go ahead and hold on to it to the next pressing season? Says he, well, it's not a raya, because b'davish and legas. We're talking about something that doesn't have a pressing season. For example, like the beer, the beer of dates of truma, which that's something that there's no pressing season. It's not a time when they do special pressing. It's something that people have in they're doing these breweries in their basements all year. It's not a special season, so you can't hold on to the season. Moreover, Rashi says if we're talking about dates, then obviously when we're saying that if it's liquid you have to burn it, obviously it doesn't mean like using it as fuel. It means you would have to let it go to waste and burn it that way, because you don't use fuel from dates. If it was wine, if it was oil, then you could say you're using it as a loop for illumination. But al kapanim, it doesn't have a pressing season. Says the Gemara, why don't you leave it for Yom Tov? Because, as the Gemara tells us later on the next Daf, that the Tumah of Amaretz does not apply in the Yom Tov. And then they could sell it then. Says the Gemara, we're talking about B'dov Hashem Mishtam L'Regel. You're right, technically he could do that, he could wait for Yom Tov, but something that we're talking about where it has an expiration date, wouldn't last till Yom Tov. And therefore we say he has to burn it. And therefore it's not a raya that he cannot hold on to it, because maybe if there was a gas, he wouldn't be able to hold on to it. And if it's not a raya, could be not, that if the chaver gets it from Amaretz, even not during the pressing season, maybe he himself could hold on to it till then, and then we trust him then, and then he could go ahead and use it. Now the Mishnah said, Vim Amar. If the Amaretz says, not during a pressing season, again, not during a pressing season, we don't usually trust him regarding Truma. But we said, if the Amaretz says, says, I want you to know, Kohen, the Truma I'm giving you, I know you don't trust me because not during the pressing season. I want you to know inside, I also put a reviews of Kachim, and then he's believed regarding the Tahara of the Truma too, because of the Kachim that's inside. So we're going to quote a teaching in Mesechtes Olas that's going to reflect back to explain the logic of this halacha. It's not us. We're not over the Mishnah Mesechtes Olas. Moed Misham Misil. Misham Misil both agree Shaboidkin, that we inspect a Beis HaPras La'isei Pesach, for those who are coming to bring the Korban Pesach. As the Gemara is going to explain, someone's on his way to bring the Korban Pesach. Problem is, the only way out of Ukraine is this one road that has a Beis HaPras with a field that was a grave plowed over that's in his way. Now the problem with that is that there might be Thomas Mess, which obviously that would disqualify him from bringing the Korban Pesach. So what he does is he checks by blowing. If there's a bone the size of a barley corn, he sees it and he's going to stay away. And so he's not going to touch it. Now, bone the size of a barley corn does not contaminate by oil by him, because if it's talking about oil, he's obviously walking over these things, even if he's not going to touch it. Only contaminates by touching, what's called maga, and masa by carrying. So therefore he checks by blowing, so that he shouldn't be moving it with his foot, because that would be a problem about a masa, which is Thomas Hesed. So although there was a grave, we knew where it was, but now that it's plowed over, there might be bone all over the place. So okay, we let you just inspect as you're walking through for your Korban Pesach, but we don't rely on this bedika if someone wants to eat his truma, because since there's no set time when you have to eat truma, he could wait 7 days after he walked through this Beis HaPras and spray himself day 3, day 7 at table. So that's what we require. We're going to come Pesach, since this whole halacha of Beis HaPras is rabbinic, they didn't say that you're going to be tummy 7 days because you're not going to be able to bring your Korban Pesach when you're going to lose out on the Korban Pesach, which is a chiv kares. So therefore they said you could check. Now, says my boy, what does it mean? What's the inspection that you do? So maybe the Mishnah says, like we explained, a person blows in the Beis HaPras as he's walking through. So making sure, blowing, make sure there's no bones that he's going to be touching, and he can walk through that way. He says a different interpretation. It says Beis HaPras shenidush. If you have a Beis HaPras that was stamped, that was stepped on, trampled with people's feet, then that's tar. In other words, we check. Was it trampled on? If it was trampled on, people had walked all over this field already, so all the bones have been pulverized. So it doesn't have a shear of tumah of a barley corn, So then that's what we check. We check if it was already trampled, then it's going to be tar. That's what the Gemara explains. Lo Yisei Pesach, we only say this for someone who's bringing his Korban Pesach. Why? Because although rabbinically we say, oh, Beis HaBras considered tummy, that's rabbinic law. We're not going to have our rabbinic law in a situation where it's not going to let you bring your Korban Pesach, which is Chiv of cars. But likely Truma, those who come into Truma, they did institute their halachas in a situation of Misa, meaning, because if a person really is tummy and he's eating Truma, he's Chayav Misa. So they mandated their rabbinic law in a situation where it might actually cause someone to have a Chiv of Misa. Now, the following question. And this is what's going to relate back from, we're explaining the halacha that Mishnah says us, which relate back to the halacha of Mishnah. The following question, someone is doing this thing. He's checking the ground as he's walking through. It's the only way he could get to Yerushalayim to bring his Korban Pesach. He's checking for his need of bringing his Korban Pesach. This same person is also kohen, and he wants to eat truma. Can he at the same time now that we're saying, oh, you're tar, can he now eat his truma when he comes out of that field? So Ulamai says, yeah, if he was checking the Beis HaPras to bring his Korban Pesach, he's allowed to eat now also his truma. Rabbi Ulamai says, no, although we let you check for your Korban Pesach, but you forbidden to eat your truma. Truma, we're going to consider you as tamei. You would have to table, you have to have purified 3 and 7 and table. Someone who Saba, so there was an elderly person that said to Rabbi Ula, don't disagree with Ula who says it's going to be mutter. Because the non-Kava say, our Mishnah says like him. Because what did the Mishnah say? If it said, if Rashli Techerabi is Kaidish, meaning although he's not believed regarding Truma, because not during the time of the pressing, but if he says, I also separate inside of it a revius of oil of kachim, then he's believed. Says the El Yid, almost so you see, but the Behemana Kaidish, for the fact that we believe him regarding kachim, Behemanami Truma, we believe him also regarding the Truma, like Rashi explains the Svar, because it's disgraceful to the Mizbeach that the Truma that's connected to it is going to be presumed Tama, but the hektish is going to be sacrificed on Mizbeach. So, because it's connected, meaning usually, we say that's the chumrah of Truma of Kachim, but if it's in the same barrel, so Achanami min the Hemna Pesach here also, so since we believe in regarding the Korban Pesach to check out the Beis HaPras, Hemna my Truma, we're going to believe us regarding the Truma, because you can't say the Truma of this person is going to be more severe than his Korban Pesach, so therefore, you see that Svara of Migui, and therefore, that's why he brought it in over here, because it relates back to the halach of the Mishnah. Now, Mishnah said, Kadiyayin v'kadishem v'chulu. If you have jugs of wine and jugs of oil that are medumais, that are mixtures, we're going to explain this shortly what it means, but it sounds like it's Toma Tevel, which is a mixture of Truma and Chul inside of it. So he said that we're going to believe you at the time of the pressing, and even for a period of 7 days before. And it sounds like it's on the whole jug, because it's in Kadiyayin. So, Tana within the rest is going to relate back to the halacha of the Mishnah. Mishnah says, "In the man we don't trust amaratzim, loy al kankanim, not on jugs, but al truma and not on truma." So the Gemara says, "Wait a second, kankanim, what type of jugs are you talking about? I kankanim the kodesh. If you talking about jugs of kachim, why? We just said this for our amiga a moment ago. Since we believe him on the hektish, but that's inside the jug, we should believe him on the jug itself." Because you can't say the jug is going to be more severe than the kachim itself. Ella, what are you going to say? Kankam the truma. We're talking about jugs of truma. So pshita, obviously. Hashda truma, man. We don't believe him on the truma itself. Akam haven't you? We believe him on the jugs. What does that mean? Why should we believe on the tahara of the jug? So rather says the Gemara. No, we're talking about either or, meaning perikonim the kodesh. We're talking about empty jugs of kachim, meaning you already poured out the kachim. Now he was protecting it for kachim. We're not trusting him on that protecting. It's only when the kachim is inside of it that we can't treat the jug more severe than the kachim itself. But it was emptied out from the kachim. And the b'shayim b'sashana, meaning basically like Rashi means it means all the days of the year, because for kachim it doesn't make a difference if it turned during the time of the pressing season or the rest of the year, as we said this in our Mishnah. We generally trust him on kachim all year round, but for the jugs we're not going to trust him all year round. And or ub'maleim the truma. And we're talking about jugs that are full with truma, ubeshas hagitis, but at the time of the pressing. And that's significant, because even though they weren't goyes on truma at the time of the pressing, that's simply because of a loss of the kahanim who are chaverim, because they're essentially going to lose most of the trumas of Eretz Yisrael, which are made by Amaratz. So we said, okay, at the time of the pressing, we're going to create this leniency, because anyways people matar on the kalim, we're going to trust him, the Amar Oretz, regarding his truma. But on the jugs, we never believed the Amar Oretz. And therefore, the kahanim that are chaverim cannot receive the jugs with the truma. they have to have the Amoritz pour from their vessels into their vessels. As Gemara is going to say similarly later on, that don't wonder that there's such a possibility that you could have the jugs tummy for 7 days and the liquids could be tar. So to over here, you could have that the liquids, the truma is going to be tar, but the jugs we're going to consider as tummy, as we'll see on the next daf. But that's what the Brisa means to say, that we don't trust the Amaretz on the jugs. Which jugs? Because we had a difficulty saying if it's kachim, the jug should be good. If it's truma, of course it's not good. So he said, no, it's either empty jugs of hektish, which then we don't trust them, because only when it's only kachim that we trust them, or when at least the jug is with the kachim, and or the full ones of truma at the time of the press, because we had said, of course, we don't trust them on truma. Of course, we're not going to trust them on the jug. No, we're talking about when we do trust them on the truma, at the time of the pressing, even though we trust them on the truma, but the jugs we don't, even during the time of the pressing season. And that's where it's not within our Mishnah. That's what the Gemara is asking from our Mishnah. That's why we introduced it over here, this brisa. Our Mishnah said the words we quoted before in the Divrei Maschil. We spoke about jugs of wine and jugs of oil that have a mixture of truma and chulin inside of them. So he said that we believe the Amaretz, my love. So isn't the case talking about when you say medumois, means medumois to truma, because generally the word dimua means a mixture of truma and chulin. And what do you tell me? That when there's truma inside, you do trust him on the jugs at the time of the season. But didn't you just tell me a moment ago that when we say that we don't trust him on the kankanim, is talking about when it's filled with truma at the time of the pressing? You say that you don't trust him. Here we see from our Mishnah that we do trust him, because kadeh, we're trusting him on the jugs. Says Gemara, no, they said in the shiur b'chia, and this is what we said the Gemara is going to explain, it's not simply medumois, which sounds like truma with chulin. We're talking about the medumois to kodesh. We're talking about that it's mixed in with kachim also. Oh, kachim, we said we trust him all year round. Not only that we trust him, we don't want to be mezalzel in the kachim. So whatever's connected to the kachim, like when we said if truma is mixed in, truma is mixed in with kachim, revius of shemen, or if let's say the jug is with the kachim, then we trust that whatever's connected, because we don't want to make it more severe than the kachim itself. So because there's mixed in of kachim, that's why we trust him on the jugs too. Says Gemara, is there such a thing that you could have dimur for kachim? Where the way Rashi explains the sugya is that he understands it's from intrinsic to the item itself, meaning not that extrinsic, that you have something else mixed into it. So tevel that wasn't fixed, I understand you could call it dimur for truma, because you didn't separate the truma. But kachim, you never have to separate from the item itself that you can consider like as if it was untight, as if there's dimur, some kachim mixed in over here. How can you say dimur? How could you even call it meduma of kachim? So Amadurei, they said in the shiur, yeah, talking about mataras tivloi, where someone is purifying his untyped produce, which is dimua for truma, because it's tevel, but he also had in mind litel min nesachim, to take from it nesachim, the wine libations, where essentially that means to say that in here, in this untyped produce, there's chulin, there's kodesh, and there's truma, because it's tevel, so there's truma in here, and there's also kodesh in here, because he plans on taking from it from nesachim. Oh, so since we trust him on the hektish, we trust him also on the truma. So essentially, this is really a chayma of the truma b'kachim, and it's only that we believe him on the truma because of the kachim, and on the jugs. Why? Because, like we said, it's disgraceful for hektish that the jugs that you're pouring out from should have a cheskes tuma, but that the wine and the oil itself is going to be sacrificed. But if it's only truma itself, you actually would not trust him on the jugs. That was really the second chumrah of truma of ukachim. This halacha that was saying that the kadei yain v'kadei shemen, that we trust him, is only because of the dimur of hektish inside of it. But if not, a chayim truma b'kodesh would be that actually when there's truma inside a jug, we don't trust you in the jug. When there's kachim inside the jug, then we trust you also on the jug. That was the second chumrah of truma over that of hektish. Now the Mishnah just ended off by saying that kodim legitos, that if it's before the season of the pressing, and even shivim yom, even for a period of 70 days, we're going to trust him, because not during the pressing itself, it's also 7 days before, because that's already when the matar the kalim, it's already considered as the pressing season. The one thing we learn from this is that Dinu, the halacha is, the levei alisa, it's coming upon the sharecropper, lemitra chagufe, to get busy with the older jugs, shiv miyayim mikmei matzar, to 70 days before the pressing season, because that's when you start already the production, like you see from our Mishnah, that we already consider it as tar already 70 days before that season. Then I'll look at the next Mishnah, continue on the theme of the previous Mishnah, regarding trusting on jugs, as that relates to the halachas of tahara. Says the Mishnah, Min hamodiim v'lifnim. Modiim is the name of a city that's 15 mil away from Yerushalayim, as the Gemara says in Pesachim Tzadim al-Beis. Now, from the area of Modiim towards Yerushalayim, Nemanim, we trust the potters who are Maratzim, which is what we're discussing over here in these Mishnayos, trusting the Maratzim, we trust them al kli cheres. Meaning, we're going to purchase from them small earthenware vessels, like bowls and cups and plates, because we can't survive without them, meaning without buying from the Amaratzim, even though we don't usually trust them with Tahara, because in Yerushalayim, you don't make kilns, you don't make these ovens because it makes smoke, and we don't want to blacken the walls of Yerushalayim. So therefore, we trusted the Amaratzim not to make a gzeir on them, because we cannot make a gzeir on the tzibah that most of the tzibah cannot withstand, and people cannot have not having plates and bowls and cups, and therefore those small earthenware vessels, we trust them and we buy from them. Now, menamodim v'lachutz, however, meaning we only let it for at least the perimeter around Yerushalayim, which we can't do it on our own. So those who live in the vicinity, at least from Modiim and inwards, then we're going to buy from them. But menamodim v'lachutz, those who are further from Modiim, then we didn't trust, we didn't give it that far of a perimeter. Now, Kate said, how so? So the Mishnah explains, actually depends. So the potter that sells the pots, so if he's coming from within the area of Modiim towards Yerushalayim, so there's three stipulations. Has to be hu hakadar, has to be the one potter himself who brought it from out of Modiim. He's the one that we trust, because like we said, it's not possible, we have to buy from someone. But if let's say this potter gave it over to another Amoritz, who lives in Modiim or inner, we don't trust the second person. It has to be the original potter. And Vehena Kaderis has to be the original pots that he himself brought, then we trust him. But he cannot combine other pots of a different potter that lives in Modiim. And Vehena Loichim has to be these Chaverim who saw him bring it. They're the ones who could trust the potter as consumers, but not other consumers. So it has to be the original potter, has to be pots he made, and it has to be those consumers who saw him bring it. Then we trust him. Now Yatza, if the moment he leaves from Modiim going outwards, beyond Modiim, in the example, it has to be within the perimeter of Modiim and inner. Now tell you in the Brisa, so just to complicate things a little bit more, Modiim, which is the city itself, Pa'am Kalifnim, sometimes it has the halacha like what's inner, meaning in the inner area that we will trust him and buy from him. And Pa'am Kalifot, sometimes Modiim itself will have halacha like beyond, where we don't trust him. So the Brisa illustrates. Kader Yaitse, let's say the potter was leaving, he was within the area of Modiim, and now he's going into Modiim. So he's leaving the perimeter and he's going to Modiim itself. V'chaver, and the Talmid Chacham, he's coming from outside of Modiim, and he's coming into Modiim, going inner towards Yerushalayim area. So then Kilifnim. Then we're going to treat Modiim itself as the area from within, and you're allowed to buy from him over there Modiim. Why? Because Rashi explains, the potter himself is not coming back. He's leaving the area soon. And if you don't buy from him, then when are you going to buy from him? Because you can't buy from him out of Modiim. But, says the Brisa, let's say Shneim Nechnasim. Let's say both of them are coming into, meaning they're both coming from out of Modiim, and they're coming into Modiim now. Then we're going to treat Modiim as if it's out of the perimeter. Rather, you would have to wait until he goes further in from the city of Modiim towards Yerushalayim. As you get into Chavav Meral, let's say both of them are actually leaving Modiim, then Kelachutz. Then we treat, meaning that they were leaving from the area from perimeter and now they're in Modiim, then we treat it like beyond the perimeter. Why? Because since you had already seen him in Yerushalayim, and you didn't buy from him over there, now you both left Yerushalayim, now you're both in Modiim, you can't purchase from him anymore. It's only if you were coming from outside. And for sure, says Rashi, the case of, let's say the potter is coming more in and the chaver is leaving out, since the pater is going to go further in the modim itself, then we require the chaver to go further in to buy from him over there and not outside. So modim is like somewhere a gray area. We will treat it sometimes as beyond the perimeter, sometimes within the perimeter, again depending on the circumstances where the kader is going and where the chaver is going. Now Amabai says, so similarly learned this as we'll prove. Our Mishnah said, Hakadosh Shamacha Sekederes. We said the pater sells the pots, V'nichnas lefnim and the mediyim, and he comes from within modiyim, then we believe him. So says Abai, time in the lefnim and the mediyim. It sounds like only because he's from within modiyim. Hamadiyim gufal hem, but modiyim itself, we wouldn't trust him. But a meseifa. Look at the next words in the Mishnah. Mishnah said Yatza, but if he leaves modiyim, in them is not trusted. Sounds like a modiyim gufal hem, but it sounds like a modiyim itself. We would believe him. Allah Shemar rather says Abai. Obviously, what we see from this is a kan in the reisha bekadu yitzav b'chav nichnas. Is when the pater is leaving and the chaver is coming in, then he has to chaper because this guy's leaving, he's going out of modiyim further out, and the chaver is just coming in. So he didn't have an opportunity to buy from him before, and neither is the pater going in; he's only going out. So then you could buy from him. That's what we said from the seifa. It sounds like the modiyim itself. We're going to believe him. Kan, but in the seifa, where we're saying that. Meaning in the reisha, then b'sheshneim yoytzim b'shneim nechnasim. Well, that's when both are leaving or both are coming in. Then we said we're going to treat modim as it's beyond that, as Lacey said, either because you could have bought from him before when both are leaving, or now that both are coming in, you could buy from him later on. No, we refer from the contradictory inferences from a Mishnah, like this halacha that was said from the brisa that something will treat modim like lefnim, and something will treat modim like luchos. Thank you to anytime for hosting us.